Welcome, everyone, to session 2 of Successful Aging, the program in which we try to give you as many tools as we possibly can to help you live your best and longest life. So, I am Dr. Dave Donohue, and I am delighted to speak with you today, in particular, about deep fitness and strength training and its importance in life expectancy. So, we're going to start with a squat. A squat is one of the most important exercises you can do. It works the ever so vital thigh muscles, which are so important for your independence and even your cognitive power. So, squatting is something I strongly encourage you to work into your regular exercise routine. When you squat, you want to sit back, as is pictured here, with your bottom moving backwards as if you're sitting down into a chair. So, with that said, one of the exercises we do in our functional assessments, and your friendly neighborhood kinesiologist or exercise physiologist will do to assess your strength, is a so-called 30-second sit-to-stand test. And it is simply a test in which you stand up and sit down as quickly as you can for 30 seconds. So I am going to ask you to go ahead and do that. You can pause the video, and I'll be waiting here for when you return. So just pause the video, start your timer for 30 seconds, count how many times you can stand, sit, stand, sit. Ready, set, go. Okay, we're back, and hopefully you're breathing heavily and exhausted and a little bit sweaty from your 30 seconds of exercise. And this table at right shows kind of what is average for a woman or an average for a man at a given age. So we're shooting to be able to do a lot of stand-sit exercises in a short amount of time. You can actually improve this if you work on it, believe it or not. So we're going to have each month a little bit of a discussion about this fine book called How Not to Age by Dr. Michael Greger, a powerful look at the role that nutrition can play in extending our lifespan and our health span. So this month, we're going to focus on the food group of the fungi. So in particular, the mushrooms, the amazing benefits of mushrooms. And in particular, mushrooms have two super longevity vitamins called ergothioneine and spermidine. And one of the exciting things about ergothioneine, it's been called the longevity vitamin because its higher blood levels of ergothioneine are associated with so many things, including less frailty, less heart disease, less stroke, lower rates of cancer, lower rates of cognitive decline and dementia, and a longer life expectancy. And ergothioneine is basically only found mainly in either mushrooms or tempeh. So eat your mushrooms every day to get your longevity vitamin ergothioneine. And one quick fun way of doing it is to purchase one of these oyster mushroom kits online, and you can grow quite a few pounds of mushrooms in your own kitchen for something like $10 to $20. And the other one is spermidine. We talked about spermidine a little bit in our introduction last month because it's such an impressive food ingredient. Spermidine is naturally produced in our bodies, but as we get older, we make less and less of it. So it's important that we eat spermidine in large quantities. And of course, mushrooms end up being a major source of spermidine. And in particular, here's a list of the sources, some of the top sources of spermidine. Wheat germ probably tops the list. And then you have tempeh, mushrooms, mango, and soy ends up being a good, important source. Soy milk is a decent source of spermidine. Green peas, lentils, lentil soup, and even good old lettuce has some spermidine in it. So with mushrooms, you're covering autophagy, you're covering inflammation, two of the main pathways by which we experience cellular aging. And so by increasing certain plant foods or honorary plant foods, the fungi, you can boost your rate of autophagy, cleaning out the old zombie cells that accumulate as we get older, and also reduce the inflammation throughout your body. And just a reminder on the powerful benefits of spermidine, that there's clinical evidence in humans that spermidine supplementation can improve memory function, possibly delay cognitive decline, something we can't say that any medication is capable of, but also reducing our top two killers, cardiovascular disease and cancer. At least there's a strong association between spermidine intake and lowering those things. So eat your mushrooms, eat your wheat germ, eat your tempeh. So let's move to our main topic, which is amazing insights about exercise and longevity. So we are definitely going to talk a lot about strength training, but before we do, I want to talk about steps, just plain old getting steps throughout the day. Steps seem to be an important component of the longevity formula in the blue zones. They get a lot more steps than we do typically. And what we find in the research is that the more steps a person takes, the less is your risk of death in a given year. In fact, people who walk about 10,000 steps a day have roughly one fourth the death rate compared to people who walk less than 2,000 steps a day. And that's after controlling for age, for diet, for sex, for race, ethnicity, for body mass index, for education, for alcohol and smoking status, for various diseases like diabetes or coronary disease or heart failure or cancer. After controlling for all that, even after controlling for all that, we see a powerful effect as we walk more and more steps through the day. So we think there's good evidence that walking steps is going to cause you to live longer. We don't have proof, but there's a strong association. And so I think it's probably a good idea to get yourself a pedometer. These things are quite affordable. They work pretty darn well, and they come in all different shapes and sizes. And if you're interested, you can get your pedometer hooked up to a remote physiologic monitoring platform. If you have Medicare or Medicare Advantage, then you are going to be a candidate to have your pedometer steps and other fitness data sent to your physician through their remote physiologic monitoring platform, for example, through HealthSnap. So let's talk about strength training. Let's talk about frailty and sarcopenia. So we mentioned last time that one of the factors that happens as we age is we lose muscle mass. It's just a natural, normal progression that everybody experiences as we get older. But that's not to say it's desirable. Because as we get older, we see a normal thigh muscle get replaced more and more with fat and get thinner and thinner. So this process is called sarcopenia, this normal loss of muscle mass and replacement with fat as we get older. That's sarcopenia. Here's another picture of that in an MRI where we see a normal thigh muscle on the left and we see a thigh muscle with sarcopenia on the right. So as we age, we get more and more frail. And one of the things we're finding is that muscle strength is declining at a faster pace because nowadays we're actually weaker than we were 20 years ago as a population. And certainly individually, we get weaker with each passing year after about age 25. So the goal, again, is to level off this curve and slow the rate at which you decline. And the good news is we have a lot of power over that because sarcopenia, it could be argued, is at the root of many diseases. Name a disease, and there's a good chance that sarcopenia plays a causative role, at least partially contributing to the development of your Alzheimer's and certainly your risk of falls or even your breast cancer. There is strong evidence that sarcopenia, that the loss of muscle mass, is partially causative of all these diseases pictured and all these more diseases pictured on the right. So how do you know if you have sarcopenia? Well, as we get older, we pretty much all develop it at one level or another. We can gauge your level of frailty by this scale, which the pictures kind of tell the story. And ideally, we want to minimize our score on this clinical frailty scale. But among the signs that you might have sarcopenia, for one thing, you might have one of those diseases pictured at the top. Could be something as simple as hypertension. Could be your indicator that you have sarcopenia. You might notice some thinning of your muscles. You might notice pain. A lot of people aren't aware that they think that the problem is the joints. I have, my knees are shot. I have bad knees. I have bad blank. But in fact, what we find is when you strengthen your muscles, a lot of these pains and joint dysfunction can go away. Tiredness, fatigue, unsteady balance, all these things are functions of the degree to which we might be weak. So strengthening can improve all these things. If you have slower walking, if you're getting more and more injured, and if you feel colder than you used to, the chances are you're losing some of your muscle that's insulating your body and producing more heat. So one of the things about muscle is that it is downright healthy to have muscle in your body because it's actually an endocrine organ and secretes these compounds, these hormones. They're called myokines or myokines. And these myokines come in many different shapes and sizes, and they get secreted in response to exercise. They also get secreted in response to just normal activity. And a lot of these myokines are very, very healthy. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor stimulates the growth of nerve cells in your brain. They call it miracle grow for the brain, and it's an important factor for maintaining cognitive health as we get older. And all these factors play a role in reducing inflammation, in having robust immune function, and in staying healthy. So it has been described that muscle mass is potentially a new vital sign. So just like when you see the doctor and they check your blood pressure and your heart rate and your body temperature, we arguably should be also checking your muscle mass because it's that important. And as we're age, we lose more and more of that muscle mass. We lose about a half a pound of muscle per year at age 30. We lose about a pound of muscle every year at age 50. So how can we measure your muscle? Well, one way is to do all these various functional assessments and strength assessments that an exercise physiologist can do that we encourage you to do as part of your homework for last month. So get yourself assessed by an exercise physiologist who can test your hand grip strength, which is an important marker for overall health and a very strong indicator of your overall strength, but also some of these functional tests that are important for everyday life, like 6-minute walk tests or sit to stand, which we did earlier, or push-ups, which are a powerful indicator of upper body strength and your risk for a heart attack, arguably a stronger predictor of your risk of a heart attack than even a exercise treadmill test, according to some research. The wall sit, pull-ups or a hang time, and a number of other tests that end up being really important. Another way we can measure your muscle quantity in your body, your muscle mass, is through a DEXA scanner. It can also measure important things like bone mineral density scan and body fat. Our previous homework was to tip your toe in the water of mindful strength training to failure, or this high intensity strength training. So we encourage you to give it a try. Try to find your way to a gym that has exercise machines and try the approaches recommended in these two books called Body by Science or Deep Fitness. So again, the approach that we recommended is this slow, intense strength training where you're doing at a minimum a core set of like 5 exercises like the ones pictured here at a super slow tempo of really like a 5 to 30 second for up and 5 to 30 seconds for down. And no lockout. We're not counting reps. We're just counting time under load. So when I do these exercises, I just start counting the seconds. And I'm going for between 90 and 120 seconds. And the good news is once you take your muscles all the way to failure, you get so many benefits and you've done such a thorough job at working your muscles that you're done for a week. Your job is to recover for a week. But is it safe for us, those of us who are getting older, to do the strength training? So there's a fair bit of research on that. This study was done on people aged 74 to 96, and they did just for 10 weeks. And they did strengthening of 4 leg muscle groups. And what were the results? 100% training compliance, no injuries, and the participants experienced improved strength, improved balance, and improved walking speed. Here's another study of 10 volunteers who were even older, aged 86 to 96. They put them through a high-intensity resistance training regime that was 3 times a week for 8 weeks. 9 out of 10 were able to complete the training. This is the one exercise they did, and it's the leg extension. So it can be hardly said that they did a total body exercise. But guess what? In just 8 weeks, 3 times a week, they had an average strength gain of 174%. That's almost tripling their strength of their quadriceps muscles, the thigh muscles. Their muscle area increased by almost 90%. So they were reversing that sarcopenia that we saw pictured. And their gait speed improved by 48% in just 8 weeks. Powerful results. This shows the strengthening improvements that we saw for the different participants, with the lines going up, meaning the strength improved. And then guess what happened afterwards? 4 weeks after they stopped the training, they had lost 32% of that strength. So it's important that we continue it. We have to continue it. So this book, Deep Fitness, is probably one of my favorites in the exercise space. And one of the things I love, they do such a good job aggregating a whole lot of science about sarcopenia and about strengthening. And what they find is this particular approach of strength training, this mindful strength training to failure, that slow, intense strength training that we described earlier, has so many benefits. It's an antidote to sarcopenia. It promotes even aerobic fitness. A lot of people think you have to run to get more aerobically fit, but you can absolutely get aerobically fit with strength training. It reduces chronic diseases. It helps people avoid falls. One of the powerful features of this, as we'll discuss, is that it enables us to really focus on training our joints and tendons, which is important for helping us avoid injury. So we can prehabilitate. We can habilitate those muscles before and prevent injuries. It also supports cognitive and psychological function. There's strong evidence it can extend life expectancy, and it can promote vitality and well-being. So this is all the value proposition of deep fitness. And as far as endurance, this research, there's a lot of research that speaks to this, but it comes as a surprise for a lot of people. But strength training can absolutely boost your endurance, the distance that you can walk, and even your ability to run. So some of the principles with mindful strength training to failure. Number one is the overload principle. To strengthen a muscle, this is important no matter what kind of strengthening exercise you do. To strengthen a muscle, you have to overload it, obviously. You have to work out with heavier muscles than you normally would work out with. You need to do progressive resistance. You can't do the same amount of weight each week, or you simply will not be giving your muscles the stimulus required to cause them to grow stronger. So you have to do the progressive resistance. You have to continually work out against more and more resistance. The momentary muscle failure or high intensity training, the idea here is you are taking those muscles to failure. And the reason that we strongly advocate this is because we think that the gains you get from that activity are more powerful than you get from any other, at least in terms of for the amount of time spent. In other words, it's much more time efficient to do this muscle training to failure. And if you're doing it slowly, it's a very low risk of injury. So one set is enough. After you've done that one set of working out to the point where your muscles fail, you're done. Slower is better because when people work out and they're pushing the weight around real fast, up, down, there's a lot of momentum. You're not really working those muscles through the whole arc of that movement. And also the nice thing about slower is lower injury potential and a better opportunity for engaging a mindfulness approach to your workout. And sufficient recovery time is another key element. So again, strengthening happens after the workout, not during the workout. And 1 week is a typical amount of time. How do you make this mindful strength training to failure actually happen? Well, here's the steps. As you sit down on the machine, here's the steps you follow. Firstly, we become present. So we want to focus on where we are now, okay? And so it's a good time to turn off the ear pods and just attuned to your own body and where you find yourself at this moment. Breathing through the abdomen through the entire exercise. You don't want to stop breathing because it'll cause your blood pressure to rise. It'll also impair your ability to be present. So we then first engage the muscles and then begin to move the weight. So the important factor here is we want to make sure that we've got our technique right, and we want to really focus on which muscles are we going to flex. So the neurological component to a workout ends up being really important. You slowly begin to lift the weight, and you again, it's 5 to 30 seconds up, 5 to 30 seconds down, very slow, and you go all the way to true muscle failure. So try to avoid that brain chatter that's trying to give you an excuse to stop now. You want to go all the way to the point where your muscles simply cannot do any more work. If the total amount of time that exercise took was somewhere between 90 and 120 seconds, we think that's kind of the sweet spot where it's not too short and not too long, and you're going to get the maximal benefit. I wanted to share another really interesting area of science with regard to fitness exercising. So this has to do with walking stairs. So an interesting study was done where they randomized women, older women, to either walking upstairs or walking downstairs. So this was inside of a building, and what they did is they used the elevator for the other phase. So if you were randomized to the walking upstairs group, then you would walk 5 flights up and then take the elevator down, and walk up again and take the elevator down, and repeat that for a number of times. If you were in the downstairs group, you did the opposite. You took the elevator up and then walked the stairs down. And so this was a 12-week study in which they did the exercise twice a week. So 24 sessions total. Each session, they did one more set of stairs. So by the end, they did 24 flights of stairs, either 24 up if you were in the upstairs group or 24 down if you were in the downstairs group. So what do you think were the results of this study? What they found is that the women walking downstairs had double the benefits compared to the women walking upstairs. Now, this might come as a shock to you, but across the board, in every single, these are different measures of strength. The downstairs is the hashed marked bars, and the white bars is the upstairs, ascending. So what we see is on almost every measure of strength, that downstairs bar was almost twice as strong as the upstairs bar. And these latter two are measures of balance. So the measures of balance improve significantly more in the downstairs group. And what's more, in this study, they measured a bunch of measures of general health. They measured body mass index and how much body weight you might have lost. They measured bone mineral density. They measured resting heart rate. They measured systolic and diastolic blood pressure. They measured your blood glucose and your insulin and a measure of insulin resistance. They measured hemoglobin A1C and even oral glucose tolerance tests. That's about 5 measures of blood sugar and metabolic disease and diabetes and insulin resistance. They measured total cholesterol, triglycerides, and bad cholesterol and good cholesterol, HDL. And again, in every single one of these measures, the downstairs group had roughly double the improvement. With regard to bone mineral density, the downstairs group had a significant boost in bone mineral density, and the upstairs group had none. So every single measure was improved for the downstairs group relative to the upstairs group. How could this be? Because they showed that the upstairs group got a good workout. Their heart rate was up and they were winded at the end of their exercises. And whereas the downstairs group was relatively not worked out, not winded, their heart rate didn't go up nearly as much. But despite that, we see that the downstairs group did much, much better. This tells me a number of things. For one thing, it tells me that the value of a workout is not directly proportional to how much it gets your heart rate up. And it's not directly proportional to how much subjective work you're doing. So we say work smarter, not harder. And it turns out in exercise, you can get much more benefit for much less work. So what is it about the downstairs? Well, this is one of several studies that compares eccentric strengthening to concentric strengthening. So this is another study that looked at eccentric versus concentric, and what they find is that that the eccentric group had a 10% improvement, and the concentric group had 6.8% improvement. So we find this over and over that eccentric strengthening is at least as effective, even though it feels like less exertion, and it's potentially a lot more effective than concentric. What is eccentric and what is concentric? Concentric is if you look at somebody doing a curl with a dumbbell, they're holding a dumbbell and they're curling it up, right? They're working their bicep muscle. But that's the concentric phase. That's the resistance as you shorten the muscle. You're shortening that bicep muscle. The eccentric phase is the opposite. It's the weight as you let that dumbbell down and you're lengthening that biceps muscle. That's the eccentric. It turns out eccentric has this powerful ability to rehabilitate our joints, tendons, and muscles. If you ever pull a muscle or strain a muscle, eccentric strengthening ends up being a large part of the solution. It's less taxing. There's greater overall health improvement in many domains, as we've seen, and greater strength gains in general. I think it's important to do both, but it's probably important to emphasize the eccentric strengthening. A lot of people de-emphasize it. They push the they do the curl intently, pulling up that dumbbell and working that bicep muscle on the concentric phase, and then they just kind of let it down for the eccentric. The difference, what we recommend is you want to go really slow on the downs, and that's how you work that muscle on the eccentric. So, which brings us to the question: why should I drop everything and start moving toward mindful strength training to failure? And one reason is because it does a better job of emphasizing the eccentric strengthening than any other form of exercise that I've encountered. Let's talk about a couple pro tips for mindful strength training to failure. One is this idea of really emphasizing the negative exercises, like I just said. So you're slow on the eccentric. In fact, you could even load it so that you're relatively fast on the up and slow on the down. If you have a spotter, you can have somebody help you on the up, on the concentric, and then so that you are really solo by yourself doing the eccentric. One of the things about eccentric exercises is you can carry about 35% more weight on the eccentric. So you can actually work out at a higher level of weight, and you can accrue greater benefits as a result of that. So to whatever extent you're able to be able to emphasize that eccentric strength training, the more benefits we think you can get. Another way of doing it is sometimes you can yourself assist the concentric phase, especially with some leg exercises. You can push the machine as you're doing the concentric, and then using your hands as an assistive device, and then let go with your hand and do the eccentric exclusively with your legs. Another approach to MSTF to make the whole experience more aerobic is to try to spend no more than 30 seconds between exercises. So this means you're getting up from one machine, wiping it down real quick, and getting over to the other one real quick to start working out. And you're going to get winded doing this. So for those who already have an exercise routine, I would recommend trying to think about ways you can bring some of these principles of MSTF into your workout routine. So some people are doing low impact aerobic kind of work where there's a little bit of muscle movement, but you're not really challenging yourself a whole lot more from session to session. And as a result, you're probably not building as much muscle as you really could. So for those folks, I would say, well, think about trying to work the progressive resistance one way or the other into your routine. For those who have a routine with free weights, for example, great, keep it up. But you might really try to emphasize the eccentric. You also might want to try to take your muscles a little bit more to failure. And another mistake that some people make, in my opinion, is they don't give themselves enough recovery time between sessions. So if you're an experienced weightlifter, you might need a week or even more between sessions to really get the maximum benefit. One set to failure, and emphasize the eccentric, as we talked about. So I want you to think for a minute about, how can I make this happen in my own life? Like, how this, it sounds doable, but I'm not somebody who normally works out in the gym. How am I going to make this happen? So think about the tactics. Please maybe write it down. Like, what is my specific plan? Where am I going to get a gym membership? When am I going to go? Let me put it on the schedule. So I just wanted to put a couple ideas out there, but schedule it. Get it on your schedule. Ideally, meet somebody there. For one thing, they can be a positive role model, and for another, and positive peer pressure. For another thing, they can help you with some of the exercises, especially if you wanted to emphasize the eccentric like we talked about. But definitely start with low weight. Focus on that form. It's much more important to get the form right, and eventually the weight will come. So you could even start with ridiculously low weight initially. And then another approach is to just go twice a week. One day you do the upper body, another day you do the lower body. And since the exercises are quick, they're like 2 minutes or less, you can cover a lot of different machines. And you'll feel good. So your assignment, each month we try to have a new assignment. For one thing, pedometer steps. Get your steps in every day. Shooting for at least, ideally at least 10,000 steps, as we saw, is a powerful indicator of your life expectancy. If you don't have a pedometer, think about getting one. Continue the important work that you've begun toward deep fitness. Whatever form of strengthening you're doing, please keep it up. Hopefully we've given you some tools today of particular activities you can do that would maybe even improve the gains that you're going to get with the working out that you're already doing. And then next we're going to shift gears, because this is a nod to what we're going to talk about next month. I'd like you to think about, what's it all about? Why am I doing this? Why am I on this planet even? So for some people, this can be a really powerful exercise of figuring out what is your wellness vision. So one of the professionals who can really help you with that is a health and wellness coach. This is what they do. They are experts at helping people formulate their wellness vision. So if you can find a health and wellness coach in your area, please give it a try and see how powerful that can be for you. We will also, associated with this session, we will have a handout which walks you through the process of putting together your own wellness vision. So try your hand at producing your own wellness vision. And then I'm going to put this on the assignment again each month, perhaps, is trying to eat more plant-based. We've shared just a little bit, and we're going to talk more about this in future sessions, about the power of nutrition. But Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen does a very good job of capturing in a checklist format sort of the key foods that you want to include in your diet as much as possible. So think about downloading this free app, running through it on a daily basis. It'll give you some insights into what you're capturing and what you're missing. And then there are lots of companies out there that sell food, pre-prepared food, to make it downright easy for you to eat healthy. And that is our program today. I wish you every success. I look forward to reconnecting next month. All the best to you.